One of the less obvious wounds people suffer after infidelity is the loss of feeling special, both themselves individually and the relationship. And what I mean by this, the way this usually works is you find out that the affair partner shared something with your partner that you thought belonged only to the two of you. It could be a song that you both bonded over, a phrase, a sexual experience, a nickname, a place. And there is something about those things where you were like, yeah, this is part of what makes us special. This is part of what makes me special to them. And suddenly you realize that this thing that represented uniqueness, significance, specialness, it doesn't have the same meaning and weight anymore because it's no longer unique. It's no longer just the two of you. And I want to give a couple of different ways of thinking about this that can hopefully help you, regardless of whether you are choosing to stay and reconcile or if you're just trying to process the story of what happened so you can move on. Because I think it's important to recognize that there are two different kinds of specialness. There's the something can feel special because it's exclusive. That's the first category. The language around this would be something like, you're the only person I've ever done XYZ with, or this is our song, or I've never shared this part of myself with anyone. It can be emotional, it can be physical, it could be experience-based. And the exclusivity, the uniqueness, is kind of a shorthand for saying, you occupy a unique place in my life. You're not interchangeable. There's something special about you and about us. Infidelity absolutely destroys this kind of specialness, this type of uniqueness. And obviously, this applies across the board. The most obvious category is sexually, but emotionally, experiences, songs, concerts, like all of these things, trips, also can fall into this category. And part of why this hurts so much is it can make you feel replaceable, because in a lot of ways they've proven that you are. There is a connection between this type of specialness and feeling secure. If I'm the only one that can fill these shoes, then I don't think that you're going to bring in anybody else. But if I suddenly find out that these shoes fit every other person, then my place in this person's life is drastically called into question. Not just now, not just in the past, but going forward too. And then, of course, there can be this retroactive effect where if you had a certain experience with them related to a city that you visited, for example, all those memories that were really special, you now are realizing they weren't as special. So the whole story and the meaning attached to it gets changed. But then there is a second kind of specialness. And this is where I would invite you to think about relationships more broadly. You probably have had more than one close friend in your life. That doesn't mean that every friendship is identical, or that every friendship means the same thing, or that the specialness of one relationship takes away from the specialness of another. In a very real way, having multiple friends or having multiple family members that are close to you prove that love does not always require exclusivity. And it also proves that those relationships aren't really interchangeable. Just because you have friend A and friend B doesn't mean you can replace friend A with friend B. And even if there are shared interests between the two people, it doesn't mean that the way that those things are enjoyed are the exact same. So this second category of specialness, I would just use the word meaning. Something can be special because it just means a lot to you, not just because of its exclusivity. And so this is the deeper question. If you're trying to figure out what does the loss of specialness mean after infidelity, one of the questions is, what did I mean to you before the infidelity? What did I mean to you during it? And what do I mean to you now? Am I valuable to you? Do you value me? Do you value us? Because the question, am I the only person you've ever shared this experience with? That's pretty black and white. That's answered and it's in the negative. And so if that's the only thing you're judging them based off of, which you have every right to do, then the question really is over. But the question of what do I mean to you now? There are a lot of different ways it could be answered. Do they choose you? Do they protect the relationship now? Do their actions communicate that this bond is their priority? Do they behave as though losing you would mean a lot to them? Because feeling special to someone isn't just about having something nobody else has ever done before. It's also about knowing that out of all of the people that are available now to them, that you matter uniquely. And then kind of as a bonus, I know I said there were two, but those first two really apply to how does the other person view you? There's the exclusivity frame, and then there's the meaning frame. But then there's also the feeling of just specialness to yourself. Like, do you just as an individual, kind of on your own, feel special? And there can be a lot of that is damaged. This is usually tied a bit more to the self-worth piece. It can damage your sense of having value just intrinsically. But I think that happens because we end up confusing extrinsic value and intrinsic value. Extrinsic value is saying, this is how other people treated this person, and that is one sign, supposedly, of what their internal value is. I think that it's an incredibly flawed way of looking at value, but it's kind of how we instinctively do it. If we see someone praising one person over and over and over and over again, we kind of assume that they have some value to other people around them. Whereas if they don't, or if they reject them, if everybody's rejected one person, then we kind of assume there must be something wrong with them. But I think that we all have seen enough counterexamples to this to know that that has to be false. I think that we all do deep down believe that every single person has intrinsic value just for being alive, just for being human, just for having a soul, just for having consciousness, whatever, however you want to phrase it. And if that's where you're suffering and that's where you're feeling this lack of feeling special, feeling chosen, feeling good enough, then that's where the work should focus. That's not ultimately about the other person at this point. It's just about how you feel about yourself. And so there's several different outcomes from this video that you could come away with. You might realize that the specialness of exclusivity has been lost in the relationship, and that might be enough for you to say, okay, yeah, now that I think about it, I do want to be in a relationship where these things are exclusive just to us, and the second that that is breached, I'm done. Great. Or you might realize, okay, yes, the exclusivity is gone, obviously, but there is real meaning here that is still special, and I'm going to consider whether or not that's worth fighting for. You might also realize that neither of those things were the main issue. It's just that your own feelings of self-worth and value have come into question. And typically this happens with people who already, prior to this relationship, struggled with those things. Maybe growing up in an environment where they felt like their performance was tied to whether they were praised, or just people who always have this negative internal dialogue going on. If that's your situation, I would really encourage you to just focus on that internal work apart from, like, go back further in the past and think about, journal about, go to therapy about, get coaching around how to heal that part of you, the part of you that always just has an assumption that it's not good enough.